I'm E.
I'm Rob.
I'm Not Really.
And I'm the Expert.
Welcome to the next movement, folks.
I've been feeling out of touch with my brain, yet I stay moving in the rush. Can't imagine distractions a healthy crutch, but these days I don't imagine much. At the first sign of tension, I reach for a means to divert my attention. Haven't been totally bored since '09, yet I'm so entertained that I'm bored all the time. Her mind's a rough thing to waste. Increasingly my mind's an unfamiliar place. Headphones on at all hours in a phone. The squash rumination dispel the unknown. Yo, I wanna marinate. Stare the anxiety and boredom in the face. Soak it in till my mind drifts. I'm so tired of feeling mindless. Yeah, but it's sad that it feels like a feat to watch TV without checking a second screen. Everything in my beck and call except the ability to muster up the will to disconnect and be alone with my thoughts. So once forced art, now seemingly lost. I'm attached to distraction, it's nearly bionic. Is this really what we wanted?
The Expert, Not Really. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us. Of course. So we're excited to dig into all the things, but of course we want to talk about this new project that's coming out on March 29th. So you two are dropping an album called BLIP, and Rob and I have been fortunate enough to preview it. And for me, this album feels like an examination of life, and humans, and our everyday happenings, wins, losses, vulnerable moments, our behavior, the choices that we do or don't make, and the consequences of those decisions. It's all there, and it feels so relatable for me. Not really, as you're describing the people in the world around you, you're simultaneously offering an analysis of your own life, and your own story is a piece that fits into the larger puzzle. I imagine that at times this approach could have helped you feel really connected to other individuals and communities, and it could have also left you feeling super lonely. Did you experience moments like this when you and Expert were putting this project together?
Let me start this way. I overthink a lot. I don't know if you could tell from the lyrics, but it can be isolating to be analyzing minutia at such a really focused level. So a lot of the songs on here are about everyday things, very everyday things, particularly so. And I think about that stuff a lot. And this is kind of the way I think about things. And so it can be isolating. So at times I do feel isolated because I'm just spending a lot of time breaking down these sorts of things. And I don't think it was anything new, but what was new was writing them into songs, because I often feel that way. And that's kind of how I move about the world and think about things. But I had never gone this far as writing lyrics, making songs around these particular concepts, and trying to really get that across on the recording.
I'm excited for folks to hear it because maybe you didn't feel this when you were making it, but I feel like once people do interact with this, then will come like that connection with people and the feeling the everyday life, happenings on this project and really relate to it in that way.
I hope so. I think that's the nice thing, right? It's isolating while you do it. It's isolating while you, I don't want to say perform that analysis, but while you maybe spiral with that sort of analysis. And just off of the singles that we've had, just to hear people say, I know exactly what you mean, has been very rewarding because, in a way I was going out on a limb sharing that sort of stuff.
Yeah, sure.
From my perspective, the album, like E said, it's full of commentary on all sorts of things, but a lot of it feels uncomfortable. A lot of details about like uncomfortable aspects of daily life, like distraction and short attention spans, insecurity about intelligence, anxiety about growing older and death, and anxiety about world events, anxiety about judgment in social situations. Like you're saying, like a lot of over-analysis about a lot of things, including how you move your hands when you're rapping, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. I listened to the album, and you're going to have to take my word for it, but before reading the album description on Bandcamp, shout out to Nate LeBlanc, I thought this is the closest thing to Seinfeld and Curb Your Enthusiasm that I've heard in a rap album. It's so observational, so focused on daily minutia, and so accurate. Like, it almost made me anxious a little bit listening to it sometimes. But that makes it very relatable too, And I'm just really curious about your writing process. Like, how did you find yourself? And you sort of spoke to this a minute ago, but How did you find yourself writing entire songs about things like how you move your hands when you perform, or attempts to enter a room in a socially acceptable way?
Yeah, I think, and thank you both for, very, very kind of you to say you relate to it, and, it's making sense, and then it makes you feel anxious. I kind of like that. But the process for this, I think it kind of came out of collaboration. So Kian, or excuse me, the expert, at times, I think thought I could do more than I thought I could do. A lot, almost the whole time, if I'm being totally honest. So I think there were kernels of it in my previous music, but I don't think I ever went full bore trying to, zero in on these things. And the reason that it came to be that way was the first two songs that we sort of were like, yes, this is it. This is the voice. This is the approach. Once we got there, it was like, oh, okay, well, I kind of understand that. And actually, it's funny. The first two songs we did that we felt like we kind of nailed the tone and the voice and the approach is Smarter Than I Am and Breaking Down in Real Time, which happened to be the first two singles. So once we set the tone in that, it was like, okay, I think I can make sense of this and kind of, work toward this for other things in life. But, we didn't totally set out to do that, but just once we zeroed in on that kind of style, we just rolled with it. And I think the nice thing is, Kian, the expert wasn't editing line by line my lyrics, but we were talking a lot about them and saying, maybe that's not the way to attack it. This might be another way to attack it. So it was cool to have someone who was almost, an editor in a way, sort of, what do you think about this? What do you think about this approach? And that's how we ended up in that really specific sort of world.
How did you land on these specific topics? Like, I imagine, just based on what you've said so far, that you're thinking about a lot of the things you do on a daily basis. But how did you land on these specific ideas?
Yeah, I think I could give you an individual answer for each song, but I don't think I could give you one overarching answer. I'm constantly writing in my head, sort of, or, trying to find stuff to, turn into a lyric. Before this album, it was mostly words and phrases, whereas for this one, it turned a little bit more into experiences. And so that just kind of was a slight shift in frame of mind that changed up the input and the output.
The project opens with a song called These Days, which is a track that offers commentary on your relationship with social media, NAHreally, and the way that it's changed your behavior as a human and an artist. And you say, and please correct me if I'm wrong, and reciting these lyrics, a mind is a rough thing to waste. Increasingly, my mind is in a familiar place, headphones on in all hours on the phone, and squash rumination to spell the unknown. I want to marinate, stare the anxiety and boredom in the face, soak in it till my mind drips. I'm so tired of feeling mindless, but it's sad that it feels like a feat to watch TV without checking a second screen. Everything at my beck and call except the ability to muster up the will to disconnect and be alone with my thoughts. So what's forced art now seemingly lost? I'm attached to distraction. It's merely bionic. Is this really what we wanted? Again, all very relatable. I'm wondering, after hearing these lyrics, do you feel like your relationship with social media and other technological platforms that tend to distract and alter our attention span have negatively impacted your creativity? And expert, I'll pose the same question to you.
I mean, I'll go first. And you nailed it. That was exactly right. And
great to hear.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like conversations often turn to this, and that's kind of, is this really what we wanted came from? A lot of times you're with people and you're just like, this freaking thing, I can't get away from it. And you're just sucked in, and it's a vicious cycle, and you kind of feel like you're spiraling. But then in the moment, it feels like it's nothing. You're just doing it. But then you step back to think about it. You get your screen time notification. You're just like, oh. So I think I don't want to say ruined my life or our lives, but
well,
it's definitely changed them fundamentally. And yeah. I think I'm sure some of the stuff I see online and some of the stuff helps with creativity, but I think focus is kind of out the window. So, it's a mixed bag, and there is of course so many good things that come from being interconnected in technology, but the constant conversation that seems to continue coming up with people that I know is just, I'm addicted to this thing and I don't know what to do to stop.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's just been said, and think we're kind of being trained to be cyborgs to a degree. But it's different for each individual. Some individuals will be on it 12 hours a day. Other people, maybe you're just doing it for an hour, some not at all. And I think it's all how you manage it within your lifestyle, and what you choose to learn or interact with. It makes you the person and affects the life that you want. But I think an awful lot of people are being sucked into it like a vortex and like can't get out. And I think that line about checking two screens, like it's just mind-blowingly amazing. And Nah won't toot his own horn. This dude, I say it all the time to him, but he is a prophet. This dude is amazing. And like, people don't understand how, like, I can't wait for people to hear this, because to nail such interesting everyday topics, or maybe, sorry, not interesting, people might think, but make them sound so interesting and so easy to understand and take on board within one listen, is such a skill. And I think it's recognized in comedy, whether that's Larry David or Jerry Seinfeld, but in rap, often it's shrouded in mystery. And that can be a great thing. Like, we all love Milo, Rap Frere, or whatever, lots of other artists we love. We talk about me and Nah all the time. But my key goal, I kept on going back to him, was, but do it simple. Do it so everyone can get it. Everyone on first listen. And you walk away and you might think it comes across so light and breezy, but it's the exact opposite. And that's his genius. And that's all, like, this dude is incredible. Like, and I can't wait for everyone to hear it. And like, I'm always trying to tell him, like, this is like, he's probably going to be embarrassed now, but it's like I'm Morpheus and he's Neo, and I'm constantly trying to get this dude to be like, to believe it, because and that's why we did. I'm not going to lie, the start of the project, I often talk to my missus all the time. I was like, this dude isn't going to want to work with me. Cause I kept on rejecting ideas, kept on rejecting songs. I think I rejected like 7 songs before we hit one. And I was like, but he's got it. I was like, I knew if I chip and I could tell we had a good rapport, and I just knew if we got there, it was going to be golden. And like, the amount of topics he covers on this record that holds such resonance for everyone's everyday life is absolutely incredible.
Yeah. You really nailed it, I think, when you were describing what NAHreally has done here. I think for me, when I heard it, it was kind of a like wake-up call to slow down and actually think about what I'm doing. Like, literally, like, I heard this song, and like right after that, I was doing what NAHreally was describing. Like, I was watching TV and I was looking at Instagram, and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yes.
Because we just do this stuff mindlessly and like robotically and don't think about it.
I'll just say I had the opposite experience. Like, I think it was the day before I listened to These Days the first time. I had been watching this show, Shogun, which is set in Japan and almost entirely in subtitles. And I was like joking with someone, like, I can't look at my phone and watch this show at the same time. I have to read the subtitles. Like, what am I going to do? And then I listened to this song, and you're rapping about just love it.
I'm not even joking. That lyric, that's why it's the first song, actually, by the way, on that record. We kind of had about the bulk of the record, and I said, we haven't got an intro. I was like, you need to encapsulate everything we've done for an intro. And when we got that back, that one line in particular about the 2 screens I've thought about that every day since he's recorded and sent that to me.
Well, it's so funny. When I watch a movie with my phone over on the kitchen table behind, I'm like, good job, man.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I felt when I was watching Shogun. Like, oh man, look what I did. Yeah.
It's
look how far we've come.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Let's switch to the production for a little bit. Expert, I think what you've done here really fits NAHreally's narrative like a glove. The bed of sound you provide on this project is reflective. It's direct when it needs to be, and at times it's meditative. So can you tell us where you drew your inspiration from when you're putting this together?
Yeah, so I suppose I came across his music, and I just absolutely was floored. I thought, I suppose, the producer in me could really see the potential, but I just thought the music beds he was going over were just so relaxed and, kind of chilled out. And I suppose he was kind of rapping over jazzy stuff. And I was like, this is really cool. And I was like, but if I could give it more weight and maybe make it a bit more interesting, less loop based, which, that isn't a diss. I think knows that that's the case, that I just wanted to make them more, I suppose, songs and have that kind of real, exactly, I suppose I was trying to do musically what he's doing lyrically. It seems like it's a really simple idea when not much is going on, but actually it's pretty clever. And that's not meant to be like bigging myself up, but like there's a lot of intricacies, a lot of changes, a lot of stuff, but it comes across so light and breezy, which is pretty much the exact opposite of what I did on the Germicide record, where it was like complete opposite. I think Stick Figure was kind of somewhere maybe in the middle, but this is like, I think comes across as my most simplified work because it's just a nice, easy listen. But I think really gives him the space for the words, because I'm not going to lie, I'm here to facilitate the words. That is what this record is about. Do you know what I mean? Well, some people might love the production and think it's the star of the show. Like the star of the show for this record is the words. Like that's flat out. That's my point.
Love that.
So I could waffle on about how we actually created it and all like that. Maybe I'm jumping the gun there.
Well, E described the production as fitting like a glove, but I also think there's a dissonance to this project. Like, because what I was saying before, Nas often rhyming about like challenging or anxiety provoking aspects of modern life, and he's doing that over these light, airy beats. Was that dissonance like something that the two of you discussed or thought about when you were making it?
I don't know if we actually did discuss that, but I can certainly say, although I probably never even said this to now really, Bjork was a big thing I had in the background, because I don't know if I often find Bjork as like this beautiful singer with an amazing voice, and sometimes she's perfect in that kind of Beauty and the Beat type thing again, or Beauty and the Beast, where she's saying really crazy stuff over these most beautiful melodies, or it's really hard beats and beautiful kind of singing and lyrics. And I think there was definitely occasions we wanted to do a bit of that yin and yang stuff as well. But also sometimes just wrote that way. So like to kind of counteract maybe, and it was a perfect marriage. But I will say there was a huge amount of collaboration in this record. Like we have, since I think it was late December 2021. Like I text this guy like every day for since those 3 years. Like apart from my missus, I probably talk to him more than anyone else. Do you know what I mean? So like it's
same here.
Yeah, so it's kind of crazy how much we've shot ideas like constantly at each other. And I think that's been of huge benefit to the final product.
Play tug of war over control of right now, but it's hard to believe evil is slowed down. On the whole, it's better to be abreast of history and current events in proper context. But when the same means that keep some informed send others backsliding into false folklore, it's more than likely that we're doomed to repeat modern day versions of the ancient atrocities that we've repeated through history ad nauseum. Only this time around we get to watch them.
There are a couple moments on the album where the beat is allowed to carry on for a bit at the end of the song, often with added softness or lightness. Like the last 10 to 12 seconds of movement and light features this light guitar playing. So It Goes does something similar. I'm wondering what led to the decision to let these tracks sort of play out.
I suppose we could talk about each song, but sometimes it was actually, I think the overarching decision maybe for the record is to actually give people time to think about the words. And because I think if we went bang, bang into song after song, I think, yeah, it's not giving you time to reflect on what he's actually saying and kind of the song in general. And in some instances, it was very much specific for that reason. So I think maybe Nah can say something else, but I think in particular the linchpin of the record is really the song All at Once. I think we might agree it's like really encapsulates the whole record and an awful lot of what we've talked about. And that's bang in the center in the record, ends side one for a reason. And at the end of that second verse, which is incredible, there's like, I play piano, there's strings come in, and it's really reflective of the journey from that song and the whole record, I think, encapsulated in that. And that was very specifically written to, I suppose, make people feel a certain way.
I mean, the thing is, I'm going to use my 16 bars, you know, I'm going to fit a lot of syllables in there if I can. And I think the nice thing about working with someone who nothing's an accident in their production, like the expert, it can be counteracted in a way that it can't be in loop-based production. So I think those moments, those breaks, I suppose, were a good opportunity to, because there's a lot of ideas being thrown at you, a lot of words, and you know, I'm happy it felt digestible, but no matter what, the word count is high. So I think those moments to take a break were good, and we talked about that directly. And that's not totally something I would have come up with myself. And so that's the beauty of the collaboration on it.
Mm-hmm. You touched on this earlier, switching back to the tracks on the project. There are a few moments when NAHreally is super honest about his insecurities. Smarter Than I Am is a track that really digs into this. So Nah, you're describing being in this position where you just want to be able to enjoy something without someone questioning your knowledge on a thing or a subject. There's this fear of having to be an expert on something you're passionate about because it'll appear otherwise if you don't use the right terminology when talking about it or know its complete history. And I really felt this conversation on a deep level. Have you ever experienced the self-doubt that Smarter Than I Am describes when having conversations about your work and hip hop in general? And Expert, I'm wondering if you can answer the same question.
You mean like 30 seconds ago? Yeah. All the time. I mean, to speak is to put yourself out there and be judged, you know? So yeah. I think, you know, it can be felt in everything. So yeah, big time. I think I tend to downplay some stuff as a way to kind of deal with that. And I don't know if I'll ever stop, but you know, I think it's a real thing, and it happens in everything. It's, you know, it's kind of a bit about imposter syndrome, right? So, or, you know, whatever word you want to call it. So yeah, you want to come across intelligent, and it's hard, and it means a lot too, because, you know, that's such a big currency. And
I think when I was younger, when I was making music, I was definitely, you know, what people thought of it meant an awful lot to me, and the feedback I would have received. But I think the older I've gotten, it's more for myself. Like that's it. It's obviously it's nice for people to comment, good or bad. If it's criticism, I could like that as well. But it's really now when I make music and albums, if it's out to the public a lot of the time, by the time it's gotten to that stage, it's been, you know, etched away so much that I'm so happy with it that, like, you know, people can bash it, but, you know, it feels great to me and I'm happy with that. Do you know what I mean? Like, not everyone's going to love this stuff. So, but once I'm happy with it, I suppose I've come to a peaceful place that if I'm happy to release it, that means I'm really happy with it as a record.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was fun to make.
Yeah.
The thing's been done. I agree. I agree with the expert totally. It better be about making the thing, or else it's just a mugs game, and you're just never gonna catch up. And look, let's be real. We wouldn't put it out. We'd just send it back and forth to each other and be like, isn't this great? If we didn't want a reaction or people to, think it's good or listen to it.
Yeah.
So, there's obviously some part of that, but better be fun while you make it. Like that It took a while, it was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's the journey is the thing. And like it sounds maybe kind of cheesy, is it? But like it's the relationship that we have built as well. Like, from when we just started to, like, that's a huge part about how I feel the record, how, it's much more than, I suppose, maybe the listener's experience, dare I say, like, because the journey we've gone on through, and we know the decisions we've made, the changes we've done, like just that part, I found that part really interesting and fun as well. So that's a part I bring away from me from the record as well. That, of course, I know the listener just hears the 14 songs or whatever, but yeah, I suppose to the creators, it's always something different.
I appreciate both of your answers. And I mean, just to kind of come from a listener perspective,
yeah,
obviously I'm coming from a much different place than you and Not Really, but I really related to this because now I was talking about imposter syndrome, which is something that I've dealt with frequently, not as a creative, but just as like a Black woman living in this world, especially where it concerns hip hop. I feel like people question you like in the way that Na is describing on the song. So it was just really interesting. Like I really gravitated towards this, even though like, again, like different perspectives, but he's right. It applies to everything. And I can't imagine what it's like as a creative.
And actually, I'll just chime in there for a second. So, because I do think, maybe this sounds weird, but like I would have been making music an awful long time in Dublin, Ireland, hip hop, like, which is like, not the mecca of hip hop. So like, so by the time, like, it's still kind of surreal when like someone like Open Mike Eagle is on one of my tracks, all of a sudden, like, some days me and Mike you just be like, holy shit, like this has actually happened. Do you know? And I suppose I maybe have had imposter syndrome in the fact that, would people very recognized and heralded people within the scene rap over my beats, I suppose. And when that kind of happens on the field, it kind of like, yeah, fuck yeah, that's dope. Like,
yeah.
Rob hinted at this earlier, but Rapper Hands is a really interesting song. Now you're walking us through early parts of your career and also moments closer to present day by poking fun of yourself. It sounds like being on stage and performing in front of an audience is something you had to get used to and build confidence around. At one point in the song, you say, I rapped like wacky, waveable, inflatable tooth pan, a real act of elbow and a loose hand. I remember years ago listening to this interview that Jay-Z did on NPR. And he was talking about how when a lot of rappers got nervous in the early days of performing, himself included, they grabbed the crotch of their pants and walked around on stage when they rhymed because they just didn't know what to do. Like they were nervous and they didn't know what to do with their hands. So it sounds like you might have run into a similar problem. So how did you overcome the awkwardness felt when you perform live? Does it ease as you get more experience and further grow into your artistry?
Yeah. I mean, a quick sidebar. At times early on, I did find myself reaching for the pants. And I was like, yo, what are you doing, dude?
It's a real thing. It's a real thing.
Real. It's like you feel anyway, whatever. I consider myself a live rapper. I love performing. And I started at open mics and I would go every single Monday religiously. And that was really where I figured out, I mean, the whole point was going to workshop yourself, I guess. And over time, I just, I literally saw a video of myself rapping and someone pointed out, what are you doing with your hands there? I thought to myself, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. And as I was going, I was thinking about it, but I just, like I say in the song, I had to focus on so many other things before I could get to a point where I was adept enough at performing to a crowd, delivering the lyrics, breath control, scanning the room in a way that's not, like a sprinkler on a lawn. Eventually I got there And then I thought, okay, I can finally think about this hand. I think some of it is revisionist history. It wasn't totally like that, but as you are developing, yeah, you need to. There used to be no thought up there. Just get the lyrics right was the original thought, and that has since faded because I started hitting open mics pretty religiously in 2015. So I'm hitting like year 9 of performing on a pretty regular basis with a significant hiatus during COVID. But yeah, so it took time, and there's many awkward moments and many awkward videos, and yeah, it's kind of a song about, developing as an artist and the fact that not everything's going to develop on the same timetable. You might get good at one thing and everything else might lag behind, and you just have to kind of accept that and just keep moving forward.
After hearing this track, I kind of wondered if you like revealed a trade secret that like rappers everywhere have struggled with this and no one's willing to talk about it. And I've wondered if at this point, like people you've shared it with have given you any feedback about being able to relate to this track.
I haven't shared it with many people.
Okay.
I haven't shared it with many people, but the people that have heard it, I think agree. I'll have to follow up with you on that though.
Yeah, it'll be interesting once it drops. See what kind of feedback you get. Placing the track "Why Don't You" after Rapper Hands, I thought was an interesting choice. It's almost like you're saying, if I can tackle this insecurity about what I do with my hands when I'm performing, then you can do that thing that makes you anxious or afraid of judgment or whatever. But after listening to the song, I thought, who is this song about?
Good question. I think this is actually almost a type of song I make. I have several other songs that are also in this vein. And well, first off, vocal sample, let it, right? Why don't you? What do I do now? How do I write in between these vocal samples? That was a really fun exercise. That song is for me, for sure. Always. It's always for me because a lot of times the perspective I write from is more so where I want to be than where I am. In some instances, a lot of times on this album, it is truly where I am. But a song like that, it's kind of aspirational, right? But I think at the same time, because there's a little bit about age in there, and you see online all the time, you're not dead once you're 30, you can keep making music. And I think there's kind of 2 different approaches to that. If all you can think about is that I'm too old to make music, maybe you shouldn't. If it's too much, let it go. But if you really want to make it, and the only thing stopping you, this little thing that's stopping that nagging feeling from like coming true about trying something, is age, it's like, come on, let's go. If you need to do it, you got to do it. So I think it's written for me as a reminder, probably written for me a long time ago, some advice I might have wanted to hear. But then it's also for people who are, keeping them in the chamber. You got to let it fly.
Expert, I want to go back and dig into your production style a little bit more. I think you do an amazing job of matching the energy of the folks you collaborate with on said project, which is always something I'm in awe when it comes to production. And of course, BLIP is what I'm thinking about the most right now, but I'm also considering projects like The Ritual, the album you did with Stick Figure, or Ritual, excuse me, it's not The Ritual. When you're creating beats, is there a general process you go through that helps to ensure that your sounds accommodate a rapper's lyricism and the direction they're taking when telling their stories?
Yeah, so absolutely. So I suppose when I lock in with a rapper and we decide we're going for a full project, I will kind of listen to their whole back catalogue over and over again, kind of make notes, playlists of kind of the songs or pieces that I'm interested in. And then I'll kind of, in my mind, or think of some reference points for, I suppose, what I think fits that person really great and what would work great with that person. And then maybe think of reference albums that I think kind of, okay, sonically, I think this might be the way to go. So although it may not feel like it on this record, like the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's was very, very much one of the main reference points. And I think Rapper Hands is actually a very good example of that. And then I suppose so there would be reference points I would have written down, and then my goal is to, search for samples and sounds and within that palette, and then to create it from there. So for this record, I kind of had about 100 ideas, 100 kind of 4-bar ideas or 8-bar ideas, and then I would kind of create them. I'd listen to them over and over again. And, if by the end of the week, I'd be like, you know what, that one isn't good. That one doesn't last. And basically that list would go down and down and down to around maybe 50 or 40. So I knew if I had 40 really strong ideas, I can get 12 songs out of this and build on them. So I would kind of shoot off now, maybe some of them fully formed, maybe, but then some just, what do you think of this little bit? What do you think of this little bit? And he'd come back, yeah, I like this, like the feel of this. And then I would kind of, it's just like a building block thing, chip, 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 chip away until we'd carve out, I suppose, a verse and a chorus maybe, or just a verse. And then we'd see where the lyrics go and what fit it. And that's kind of how it act away with it. So that's kind of how the songs were created. But also at the side note, I would have like a reference point of loads of songs. I made playlists for now, and I'd be like, these are a lot of songs I think that have brilliant ideas, either lyrically or structurally. So sometimes I can enforce, I suppose, how a song is written, if I'm being honest, by the structure. So a perfect example is Why Don't You, that you were just talking about there. So that's actually based off a song by Modest Mouse called You've Got Everything. That I've been obsessed with that song since it came out. I think it came out in 2007. And basically the chorus changes every single time. So it goes, you've got everything. Then it goes, you've got, or then you've got everything, you've got, and basically it changes it every single time. So then I was like, that's such a dope idea. So if I can get the right vocal sample and we can chop it up and make it different every time, but it seems the same. Most people may not even realize it. They just think it's the same every time. But sort of, Why Don't You, once I had that sample, I chopped it up. It changes each time, between the verses. So I was like, that's a really interesting idea. Okay. That means we have to change it from a normal 16 verse. So then another big, inspiration for this record, and all my records I make really, is a band called Love, and they've an album called Forever Changes. They're a psych band from this would have been like 67 it came out in, and they have a song where they kind of do that 4 bars or 8-bar idea, and then it kind of goes for 2-bar break onto another 8-bar kind of. So it's a really interesting structure, and I knew as soon as I had that and I sent it to Na, I was like, it sounds, because I'm with such a gifted writer, I was like, this song cannot fail now, because it's so interesting in the structure and it's got a really cool chorus that changes each time. Once he nails the topic, this is gold. And once, I suppose, we went back and forth with some ideas and he came back, and that's actually my favorite song on the record.
I think mine too. And
Yeah.
I just a quick plug for The Expert, basically, when we were talking about working together, I think what ultimately sold me was sort of a vision for what we were going to do. It's, you can agree to work on stuff and, it can sit in inboxes or text messages or whatever. But, he had ideas, and I don't think I would have thought of them myself, but I agreed with them very often. So it was sort of like, oh, I got to do it. I got to make this album. We got to make this.
Yeah, and I know some people that won't be, some people just want to send off files and stuff like that, but it's like you were saying about enjoying the music, enjoying the journey. Like the collaboration is such a huge part of it, Like I could just send off 10 beats or 12 beats to some rapper and that's it. That's my job done. But like, I like the collaborative piece, and like, that's not to say like, I think my ideas should be all over the record. Now, if people shoot it down, that's fine. But I think the discourse in creating the songs and the record is really interesting and really important. And often most rappers or artists, if we're working this way, don't think about things because they're not questioned enough. They just write their 16 and do it, and then you go, why did you do that? Or what, that was an interesting choice. How come you didn't flesh that bit out? Or what that chorus is. And most rappers, and I'm not saying they should, but like they're probably not analyzing or thinking about it. They're just like, yo, that's dope. You know, and lots of producers saying, and sometimes I'm like that as well. And now I might go, that's the best bit. Why didn't you do that bit more? And I think it's that questioning and going back and forth is what often brings out the best in people. I think, you know, two brains are better than one. You can have a great idea and that could be a brilliant song, but if you flesh it out and go different avenues off the core idea, you may stick with the original, but you may get something much better.
Damn, I love that. Thank you for that walkthrough. Appreciate your process. He was mentioned earlier, Open Mike Eagle. He's featured on Breaking Down in Real Time. And once I started listening to BLIP, I was really excited to see him on here. He's somebody that often is very thoughtful and observant and just offers these commentaries about life in his own work. And you can hear that on this song as well. I'm wondering if that was the motivation behind his involvement with this project.
Yes, definitely. I mean, to be candid, he's just one of my favorite rappers ever. So I think early on in the process, we started talking about who, if you could pick anybody to be on this album, who would it be? And right, that was literally who it was. And so we made the songs, we made many songs, and that song stood out as one that, you know what, I think he's the guy for that one. I think he's the right fit because, like you said, he's good at this sort of similar conversational analysis, and he has some hilarious lines in the verse that he gave to us. So, you know, honestly, the reason was because we wanted to aim high and see what would happen, and it ended up coming through. And you know, if the song didn't fit for him, we wouldn't have sent it. I'm confident to say I don't think we would have done it just to do it, but it felt right. So yeah, we went for it.
Yeah, I loved Mike for a long time. I think he's great. And he was number one on Nas wish list. And I don't think he thought it could actually happen. So I'm delighted it did. But yeah, I just knew that just their styles would be a really good match. And yeah, I might be kind of jumping forward here, but my number one choice for this record, I just thought their voices, I just thought Hemlock Ernst and Now would be a perfect fit. Just based off mainly the Kenny Siegel record. And that's the one song I will say that where it was someone else's kind of history was in my mind while making it. Like it was pretty much made with him in mind. Although I knew it would fit Nas well, it was made with the intention to get him on it. So like the fact that all the pieces of the puzzle came together was just like pretty amazing. So yeah, shout out to Controller 7 for kind of hooking us up there with that link because I didn't know how we were going to get him.
and because again, no shoehorning allowed, right? So
yeah,
you know, the expert told me that, and I was like, all right, dude, cool, yeah, we'll try. Like maybe, I don't know. I hadn't written a word, and it just worked out in such a way that, you know, it was the right concept, the right approach, right person to make the intro, and it worked out. So, you know, a little bit of luck, a little bit of serendipity, but I hope we wouldn't have force fit him on a song, but you know, you can never know for sure.
I love the way Mike ends Breaking Down in Real Time just by saying "Stay curious," which I thought was such a positive way to end this song. And in a similar way, you guys have ended the album with little wins. You know, after running through so much of life's like disconcerting daily challenges, you end it with this like lovely gift for the listener. I'm assuming this was intentional, knowing the expert and hearing you guys talk tonight. Was the song made with this placement in mind?
I think once it was done, we knew it was a closer.
Yeah.
What did you? Because I think the expert was the one. I sent it, and he was like, "This is the closer." So, and I said, "Yeah, I think you're right." So I don't know. He'd have to tell you.
I did think so. I suppose a couple of the beats I would have kind of earmarked. Oh, this is the start of a record. This is the middle. But I did think that the outro piece of music on Little Wins very much leaned towards a finale. And then when Nas sent over the demo of the idea, because I think it was just a verse to start with, I was just like, oh yeah, this is it, kind of the nice positive end, if you want to put it like that. But and such a just simple, lovely idea that is, again, another thing I think about all the time since we've recorded this record. Because people, it goes back to the first song, we're too busy checking screens or, you know, getting distracted in some way when we really need to think about, like, hey, dude, we made a record. Isn't that fucking great? Like, you know, and I think it's something to celebrate today, being with you guys chatting. This is something to celebrate. And, you know, people getting to hear this record really soon, something to celebrate. And there's lots of little things every day. A ritual I have in my house is when we're eating meals, we talk about our top 3 things of the day, you know, that good things happen. I think it's really important to take those moments and just, to kind of be less distracted.
That's what I really appreciated about this song. It was, again, another reminder to slow down and just appreciate what you have done in your life, you know, whether it's big or small, because again, it's that act of just moving through life robotically and not taking the time to just celebrate the wins. And I love how the song opens. Oh, look what you did. You should put it on the fridge. It's not only for little kids. Elevate little wins. Put them on the fridge. It could be so hard to remember to celebrate those things, you know. And an expert, you might have answered the next question that I have already in what you just said, but I was wondering, as creatives, like, what practices do you engage in that help you focus on the little wins you had throughout your careers versus being stuck on the things that you haven't yet achieved?
For me, every time, like, I feel like the 14-year-old or the 15-year-old is when I touch the record. When I touch the record, it's like, oh my God, look at this. This is like the accumulation of 2 years or a year or whatever. And the packaging, open it up, listen to it. Like, that's the first time when I put it on the record player and I just listen to it, it's kind of like, I suppose, the joy. Like, the artifact really means something to me. You know, if stuff always doesn't come out in vinyl in the future and stuff like that, that's cool as well. But there's something really special about it for me that kind of feels like not a little win, a huge win and a big victory. And to think that other people will have this in their home and spend time with it is like really humbling and really amazing, because as we discussed, there's a lot of distractions in this world. And for people to give, you know, 40 minutes of their time up to me and Nah, like, that's really precious and something I will never, ever take for granted.
What about you, Nah?
I mean, for me, you know, the reason I keep rapping is because I love writing a good rhyme. And there's this MF Doom quote, and he says something about, I get one funny and then another funny, then another funny, then another funny. And that's what it is to me. And it's not necessarily funny per se, but when I'm writing raps, I find myself laughing at a good line. I'm like, yo, I'm nice at this. Like, this is fun. And that I like that. That's fun. That's really enjoyable to me. And then, you know, getting a chance to perform. This is the first time I've had a physical release, so I'll have vinyl in my hand at some point soon, and I'll know how that feels. But yeah, everything. I mean, you know, to me, I don't, you know, it can be frustrating. We worked really hard on this. There were a lot of, you know, we'd run into a wall. We had, you know, a few things where we had to kind of get through them, or, you know, leave songs that got rejected. But, you know, being a creative is just, you know, I just like doing it. It's relaxing to me. It's something that, you know, when I have free time, that's usually what I'm doing. So yeah, those little wins are everywhere, to the point of it just being the line level, or like I tweak a syllable in such a way that makes it a little smoother. So it's that.
Yeah, it's mental health for me. Like, I couldn't live without it, to be honest with you. Like, with music in general, I couldn't even go probably a couple of days without listening to music. Like, I go insane. So yeah, just listening to music and being creative is just something that, whether it's shared with the public or not, is just something I have to do.
And speaking of listening to music,
let's get it on. I keep to watch the spot get blown. I be the sick lunatic with the devilish poem. From the mist of the darkness, I come with this, hitting straight to the chest like a primacy mist. Resurrector, yeah, the fanatical type. I'm like a bat in the night when it's time to take flight. Here Here I am in the flesh, and yes, I love sex. I'm obsessed by the sounds the track possess. Intellectual, killer, special, majestical. Open up the devils, have them hanging for my testicles. Nowhere to run to, baby. There's nowhere to hide.
Fuck it, another day, another target. From here to Nantucket, MCs kick the bucket. I'm rugged and rough, blowing up till I bust. While other rappers is flatter than a white girl's butt. I manifest my name and the reason I came in the first place. Don't shake your brains like an earthquake. A lot of people admit that I am raw high. Cover my ass like a bee, I am. Store my doors are real wicked like Dharma. A whole alma mater for niggas is like a meal ticket. It's nowhere to run to, baby. It's nowhere to hide.
Every episode, we spend the second half of the episode talking about an album chosen by our guests. This could be an album that's important to them because they grew up with it, or it's just an album that they really appreciate. So tonight we are talking about 6 Feet Deep by Gravediggaz. I'm always curious when we have two people on at once, how they came to the album that we're going to discuss. So how did you two decide on 6 Feet Deep?
Well, as soon as we knew we were going to be on the show, I said, hey, do you want to talk about Milo? Just a Milo record. And he said, what about Gravediggaz? Straight after. And I went, oh, yes. And because I absolutely love this record. I always have. And I don't know if it's abundantly clear in my music or if I haven't said it before, but like RZA is my hero, or like he's the reason I make music. He's the reason the first time I heard 36 Chambers in particular, Ain't Nothing to Fuck With, like that is the reason I'm making music. Like RZA, the 93 to 98 and beyond, but those 5 years is just the greatest run in music as far as I'm concerned. And I actually think him as a writer and rapper, this may be his best piece of work within that time frame. Yeah, so just RZA's just the best.
And I think, as the expert said, we talk a lot, ongoing conversation for however long now. And for me, Wu-Tang was the genesis of my hip hop fandom. That was, I liked hip hop before, but when I was introduced to Wu-Tang, that was it, and didn't turn back. But at the same time, I was introduced to this album too. So to me, both are canon in my personal life. Yeah. But I know that's, wasn't the case in real time. So just thinking about, I knew the expert loved the RZA. And also, with the De La Soul coming back to streaming, I think I've been thinking about Prince Paul a lot, and so it was a nice combination of those things.
When did you two discover this album, and what did you think about it when you listened to it for the first time?
I'm old enough to remember when it came out. And I suppose I was, like I said, I was obsessed with 36 Chambers when it came out. I could kind of been, a Snoop, Dre, Warren G kind of guy before that. But then I heard 36 Chambers and it blew my mind. And then, I heard Tikal, which I loved as well. And then I think this came out the same year as Tikal, and just anything to do with Wu-Tang, I was keeping my eyes and ears open for, and I just was blown away by it. And I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't that au fait when it came out with Prince Paul. Actually, I kind of came to De La a bit later, and maybe it's because it's the first thing I heard, but I actually think this is Prince Paul's best work as well. I think it's so cohesive, such a brilliant idea, and it's just perfectly executed. So yeah, I came across it like in '94, and I remember the first single and the video was really impactful. Then Nowhere to Run. It just was on the MTV Raps all the time. So yeah, just blown away by it.
For me, I definitely got introduced to Wu-Tang around when I was 14, 15, so 2006, 2007. And it wasn't long after until, you like this? Check this out. And, I think the torture, I think it probably had something to do with the torture skit on 36 Chambers. It's like, let's go one level deeper. But, to the point that the first rap group I was in and like the crew that I rapped with, I would not want anyone to hear it, but there is a song, I'm not on it, but Over, not Constant Elevation. What's the track after Constant Elevation?
Nowhere to
Nowhere to
run.
Nowhere to Run, Nowhere to Hide. That is on the second rap album I ever made. So, when I started rapping, it was 36 Chambers, it was Gravediggaz, it was Dots Effects, it was Big L on CD in the car. That's how we were rolling. So to me, this is like pretty much up there with 36 Chambers.
Yeah.
I just want to mention, like, I love how, like, teenagers, like, keep finding Wu-Tang, like, generation after generation after generation. I think it's going to always happen because they're just that group. So I just always appreciate, like, people who were really young when this, when 36 Chambers originally came out, say, like, well, I found this when I was a teenager. I feel like that's an answer that we've heard before.
Yeah, it's sure, like, I think forever Wu-Tang will be the entry point for an awful lot of people. I think the more time goes on, perhaps bands like NWA, and dare even say De La Soul, the first couple of records may not age as, like, may seem like quite old in inverted commas for someone in 2040, whereas I think Wu-Tang will always remain the core of, like, what raw underground hip hop sounds like. People are still trying to emulate it to this day. Like, just that RZA's style, I think, is just, it's like Jimi Hendrix or whatever, or the Smiths or whatever. It's bands, people just, that's how you do it.
Well, you're talking about how raw it is. And when I heard that you guys picked this album, I was like, is there a project more opposite to BLIP in its sound and style than this album? And for that reason, I love that you chose it. And despite how opposite it may seem, I actually think the expert might share. You've been talking a lot about the RZA, but I listened to this album this week and I thought, I think the expert might share in the, like, Prince Paul lineage.
Yeah.
Referring back to the Bandcamp write-up, Nate LeBlanc describes the production on BLIP as weaving together colorful sonic fabrics into vivid tapestries. I mean, that sounds like Prince Paul to me, particularly his work with De La, but also in moments on this album, like Nowhere to Run, Nowhere to Hide comes to mind. I know you like to refer back to Edan as a heavy influence, but how much did Prince Paul impact you as a producer?
Yeah, hugely. I absolutely love Prince Paul. But probably the first De La record, not so much. Like, I like it, but I think most people, think 3 Feet High and Rising, especially, I think, come back to stream, and that kind of imagery has really come back and what people remember. But it's actually really the other De La records that hit with me, and not just the De La records though, because I think Gravediggaz, Handsome Boy Modeling School, Prince Among Thieves, and I think they're the ones I really resonate with, because it's from the producer's point of view, it's almost like, I have this idea, how do I bring all these people into my world and put a shape around it? Or I suppose he's working with De La and working with groups, but I think when he's kind of trying to create his own world, he's absolutely brilliant. And I think this record in particular, 6 Feet Deep, like, it's so visionary. Like, the sounds, the sonics, the way it's all pieced together. I think just pulling that off as a cohesive sonic idea is just a masterstroke. And I think he's just so gifted and so interesting, and the layers he uses, the interesting sample choices, definitely had a really big influence on me. So yeah, I absolutely love Prince Paul, and plus he seems like a cool dude, which is always a nice bonus.
Super nice.
Yeah.
He is just a fucking genius. And I think, like, every time I listen to something that he's done, like I'll go, like, I haven't listened to this in a while, but I was listening to it today and, like, earlier this week, and I was just like, God damn. Like the production on Defective Trip is, like, fucking out of this world. Like, the small touches that make it incredible, like the horns throughout the track, the piano riff that follows the lyricism, and then the drum break that falls on that 3-minute mark. It is fucking amazing. Like, those little things. He does things like
and
that.
And the little dust, the little dust at the start, all that stuff. Yeah, beautiful.
It's so fucking good, and I'm just always reminded of that when I tap into something that he's done. Now, I wonder, like what draws you to production? Like just like talking about the production on 6 Feet Deep and just like production in general, what immediately draws you to something when you're like deciding to work with a producer?
I think what it does to the neck, it's like it's got to have, it can't be, it was funny. We were talking a little bit about the run of Bang Your Head, Here Comes the Gravediggaz, Graveyard Chamber. That's a little up and down for me, right? There's not much side to side. For me, I like a little side to side, a little groove to it. So I think, ultimately, like on this album, there's kind of a lot of that. I mean, 6 Feet Deep, we can talk about that does crazy things to, that's all over the place. But something like Defective Trip, something like 1-800-Suicide, it's got a groove to it. And that's what always draws me to an instrumental. Just that little bit of strangeness, the little oddity that we can get is always going to draw me to something.
Yeah.
Expert,
what? Yeah.
I was sorry, just because I actually think when I really think about, and it was a great question because I don't think about that often, but I think the strangeness of Prince Paul is what I've incorporated into my world. Yeah.
Okay.
So you might have something quite straight, but then there's lots of kind of weird stuff going on in the background. And sorry to go back to BLIP for a second, like there's a couple of songs in that have a really nice melody and kind of simple idea going on, but then there's lots of weird little noises and shit going on in the background. That is definitely from the Prince Paul world.
Yeah, for sure.
Staying on Prince Paul for a moment, one of the things I love about this record is the way that he's still managed to it's a very it's a dark record, but he still manages to squeeze in here and there like some goofy stuff, like 360 questions to ask a Gravediggaz. I was like, this is straight from the De La Soul sessions, but somehow still fits on this record. It's just great.
Yeah, he's genius.
There's a lot of the DNA, I feel like, of like Prince Among Thieves on this album, leading up to making something that involved and conceptual. I think this was right there. And, you're right. This album is kind of funny. It's dark. It's kind of funny. I don't think it's there's the shock value lines, but then there's also lines that are not in that world and, are satirical and, analyzing society a bit. So it's got a great balance and the pace of it is just perfect.
Yeah.
I really love Poetic on this album. And there are times where how could you not laugh at the way he's like his voice, the way he's telling a story, it's just funny. Yeah.
Oh, that line about, better off with my hand. That I'll never forget the first time I heard it. I was like pissing myself laughing. He's amazing on this record.
Yeah.
But the key to those lines are the deadpan ad libs after those lines.
Yeah.
Down the corridor is old fat and old fat.
Yeah.
It's just so good.
Yeah. And the animation of the MCs on this record is incredible because RZA is so animated on this record as well. Just so many amazing lines that he kind of Figaro, and just kind of just really out there, and his lisp is really, to the forefront as well. I think it's just so enjoyable. Like it's really fun, although it's quote unquote dark or hardcore, which I kind of find ridiculous and redundant. I agree. It's a very, very fun record.
That's what I wanted to ask you both. Like, do you really consider this hardcore? I was listening to this today and I was thinking about it and I was like, I have heard some darker shit than this. Maybe for the time, I guess, but it's not that dark to me.
I don't even think they considered it horrorcore. It's highly conceptual.
Yeah.
And they lay it out for you in the first track,
Right.
Yeah, I think it's more that the concept is what may coin the term, but I don't particularly find this horrorcore like that. Yeah. No. I find a million records more offensive or scary than this record.
Yeah, if it doesn't go ahead, sorry.
It's marketing. I think it was the marketing. I've heard a lot of stories about this album. I think it was the marketing. I mean, you look at the cover, I could see why someone might think that. You think of the names of, the alternate names of the MCs and Prince Paul. But no, it's much bigger than that. I think the expert was going to say it's a little reductive to call it horrorcore, and I think I think it might be.
That said, one of my favorite Gravediggaz songs is on the Tales from the Hood soundtrack.
Yeah.
From the Dark Side. I love that song.
Yeah.
Although, you know, Tales from the Hood was supposed to be funny too, like Tales from the Crypt was.
I love that Wu-Tang track off that series, of that album as well. Yeah. But I think it's interesting the journey of the concept from the first record to the second record, where they were obviously like, oh wait, we can't pull this off again. I think we have to kind of go straight, which, you know, people can argue what they want, but I don't think it was as effective, and they kind of lost their magic by doing that.
Midas the Beast would disagree. I think if I recall,
I think it's got some really good stuff on it, but I think it's also got some, and I think RZA and Prince Paul would say, like, you know, B standard stuff. You know, they were getting some of the throwaway beats. They were getting some stuff. But I think lyrically, kind of the other guys stepped up. But I think, you know, RZA kind of checked out. Let's be honest.
Wow.
And Prince Paul definitely checked out.
So if I recall, tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Midas the Beast told us that he thought that was RZA's best work.
He
the
did.
Second Gravediggaz.
I'm almost positive he said that. Yeah.
Sorry, I meant on a production. Sorry, I just meant on a production scale there. Yeah. No, because actually, I think RZA, whenever he does rap on it, 12 Joules is incredible. What was the first single, like the second track on it, which is just bananas? You know, my penis rising up in the morning like a phoenix. Like, no, Riz is incredible. And like I said it at the very start of this conversation, I honestly think one of the most under-discussed things about RZA and Wu-Tang during that flood, 93 to 98, is how incredible a rapper RZA was. It kind of, people look at all the other people, but if you listen to his performance on Wu Gambino's or on Fourth Chamber, dude is stealing the show. Like, he's absolutely incredible on all those records, with a really unique, crazy style that kind of no one else was doing, and kind of playing his part to fit the song, I always thought, as well. And he was unbelievable during those 5 years. And it's people may disagree with me on this, but I just think it's a damn shame what happened to Bobby Digital and like that The Cure or whatever. What could have, because I think that's a good record, but I think if something had come out a couple of years earlier, it could have just been incredible.
This is an album that really makes me appreciate album covers. Like, it's one of the fucking toughest pictures I've ever fucking seen. Ever in the history of hip hop. It is so fucking good. Like, I could look at it all day. It's shot so beautifully. And really captures like the content of the album. Were you gonna say no?
And Prince Paul, the director, you know, in the back.
Yeah.
Poking through, not up front, but ever present. It's just, it perfectly, like, you know, we talk about the marketing thing or whatever about the horrorcore, and sure, the cover of the album could be considered that, but yeah, it's just, it's spot on, you know, just it's so good. And just the three main characters, just so animated, so bought in to the concept. Throughout the whole album, there's just never a moment, like, to the point that some of the features you're sort of like, oh, dude, you missed it. You missed the memo.
RZA with the fangs is the best RZA.
Oh, I stare at his grill every time I look at this. That's the one thing I keep looking at.
Someone, I'm sure, can, you know, get back to us on this after, but I think, I don't know where it was this photo, but definitely the other photos taken with RZA with the fangs, I'm almost positive was taken by the amazing B+ from Limerick, Ireland.
Yeah, you might be right.
The guy who took this album cover, his name is Christian Whitman or Watman, something like that. But I looked it up today because I was really curious.
Amazing. Yeah. But there's definitely ones with, maybe it wasn't with Gravediggaz, there's ones with RZA with fangs. Definitely must have been around that time. And I'm almost positive B+ from Limerick, Ireland did them. Like he's
amazing.
He's done loads of
amazing.
Stuff. You know?
Sure, yeah. When I logged on tonight, and you had this album cover as your background, I realized I have what is Prince Paul wearing around his neck?
Oh yeah.
Is that like I I don't know what it is.
Light.
Is it a light, like a miner's light? Or...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I never
that would
noticed
make
that
sense. A light would make sense, right, Kino? Because they're digging
Yeah.
graves.
Wow, that's going deep into the concept. You need that light. It's critical. But
I remember on he was on What Happened Was, wasn't it? And I remember he said his initial first name was the pallbearer, because of Prince Paul. I thought that was ridiculous.
I'm trying to figure out what it is. It almost looks like, from this angle, it looks like a genie lamp, but I know that's not what it is.
No, I'm
can't figure it out.
I'm gonna go with the light idea. I like that.
Yeah, yeah. That sounds better. Sounds better than what I just said. The dude's name is Christian Whitkin.
Amazing picture.
Yeah, and he's done a lot of shit. I was on his his website and looking at his portfolio. He's done a lot of hip hop photos, actually.
Yeah, amazing.
Pretty great. Yeah.
Rest in peace to Fruit Khan.
I was thinking about Fruit Khan's best moments on the album, and I think the melodic moments are the best. 1-800 Suicide Verse, crazy good. And first or like singing, crooning, whatever you want to call it. I think that's where he was at his best on this album in particular, because those moments just such earworms, so memorable. So
yeah,
and just to kind of rewind back to 1994 when this came out, when times were very different. There was no internet and like that. The first verse by Shabazz the Disciple on Diary of a Madman held such weight. It was kind of like a Nas on Live the Barbecue or something. I remember people were anticipating his next move so badly. And so it kind of didn't pan out for him with labels and stuff like that. And I don't think his record came out for years and years. But that verse is absolutely incredible. And that song, going back to Prince Paul, Creating a World, the courtroom, everyone going on the screen, is just so incredible.
Not only is that verse amazing, the second before that verse is incredible, where the lawyer goes raving madman, and then it like goes bear witness.
Yeah.
Insane. And then in that beat too,
the beat is insane.
The whistle, the strumming guitar. Is it a whistle, a scream? I don't know. The strumming guitar. Oh, that's a RZA beat, right?
Yeah. And another guy, RNS, who helped them out at the start. Yeah, two of them. Just absolutely incredible beat. And I don't know, not to sample snitch, but if you look up the two songs he sampled, that they're so amazing as actual songs as well. Amazing songs.
To do that.
Yeah.
So one thing, just thinking about the moment in time that this occurred, because just thinking back to Prince Paul talking about it, this was Prince Paul looking for the next thing after De La, and this was the RZA right before, or like right as Wu-Tang was, becoming the thing. So interesting to imagine, two legendary sequencers and producers beyond beyond beat makers, sort of directors, maybe you could call them, one looking for his next act, the other just about to go absolutely bonkers. It's a pretty wild, it's a wild time capsule. And I believe by the time they started recording it, like RZA was already big, but still the planning, the concepting, they were all just so into it. So dope.
Very rarely in hip hop where you have two kind of superpowers coming like that. Does not happen that often. Like producers, kind of thing. So yeah, absolutely incredible. Sorry, I cut across it.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often. When it does, it doesn't always sound this great, like it doesn't work out this well. I always thought it was interesting that Prince Paul took psychoanalysis comes after this. He kind of took this idea to another level. almost to the point where there are moments on psychoanalysis where you're like, ooh, you might have gone a little too far there.
Yeah.
Dial that back a little bit.
That's more horrorcore than this.
I agree.
Yeah.
I can't say it's a record I revisit that much.
Not really. The Expert, this has been such a lovely conversation. We really appreciate your time. BLIP is an amazing project. We're really excited for folks to hear it. Comes out March 29th. Folks are in for a treat. Before we go, is there anything that you want folks to be aware of leading up to the 29th or even after that? Just maybe upcoming projects that you also have.
Buy BLIP. If you want it. If you want the vinyl, buy that. That would be amazing. If you're in Portland, Maine, Providence, Rhode Island, Boston, Mass, Brooklyn, New York, I'll be doing shows in each of those places in April. So, find me on the internet. That's out there. I think that's kind of it.
Yeah, I would just ask people to, if they've enjoyed the conversation, to give BLIP, 40 minutes at a time and sit with it and see what they think.
Without looking at your phone. Put your phone down.
Yes, preferably. Actually, it's a headphones listen, I think, as well, while you're walking around.
Yes.
Other than that, I'm chipping away at a few other things, and let's hope all four of us are back here together in 2 years' time.
Yeah. Looking forward to that. Well, thank you both again for joining. Lovely conversation. Folks, this has been The Next Movement. Thanks for listening.
Peace.
At night walking, I'm reminded every city window has a whole life behind it. A full collection of hang-ups and hopes and banged-up feelings and inside jokes. Intermittent movement, an emanating light from a lamp or TV, the only proof of life. The windows wide open or shades pulled tight. A life that surely looms large from the inside. Lives stacked up in tall towers, squeezed in walk-ups with 24 hours to make ends meet and maybe even make meaning, often at the expense of sleeping or dreaming. Yeah, I feel small from the sidewalk. My life shrinks, zooming out from my block to my neighborhood, city, state, country, continent, and planet. I'm just a blip trying to manage. My little tiny life seems to me to be of a certain size, but if you walk by my window at night, it's just movement and light. My little tiny life seems to me to be of a certain size, but if you walk by my window at night,